back to the Skin Philosophy Edit. I am here with Mary Jane, and we were talking about all things on beauty and aesthetics at the moment. Mary Jane's a writer for the Cork Independent and for the High Lifestyle in Ireland. So it's all about, you know, lifestyles, tips and tricks that Mary writes for. So hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Anna Louise?
Good, good, good. So we get started with like telling me a bit about yourself. So how long ago did you get into this industry? Where did you start off with?
So the beauty industry I've been in for about 14 years. So I am now 44. So I was kind of a late starter in the sense of I went when I finished college, I did marketing and business studies in college, and I took the business route, if that makes sense. So I went down the kind of more corporate route, I worked for one or two multinationals, then I worked for one or two smaller companies. But I always kind of had this really kind of gnawing passion that I loved beauty. But I never kind of really thought it was a serious, that it would be something that I could put my skills to, if that makes sense. Like I never thought that I could make like a really serious career out of it. Because I was very into skin, but I wouldn't have been into the other side of it. I wouldn't have been into the waxing and the massage and that element of it. So I couldn't have seen myself going into being a beauty therapist full time, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I started, and I just made a decision one day. I really hated my job, and I used to be on social media saying, God, I'm in the bunker. And that's kind of how I felt. I was in an office, and it was just not really just very me, because I'd done a lot of work in retail. So I decided I was going to take a leap and go back into retail. And I decided to do that via Brown Thomas. So I went in as an account manager for a big skincare brand in there, and absolutely loved it. And one of the highlights of my career, I would say, was my 5 years working there. And while I was working there, I used to put a lot of things up on my personal Facebook, like about products and stuff that I would use. And not always, it wasn't always Shiseido, which was the brand I worked with. It was just things that I found along the way, and other brands around Thomas that I maybe hadn't heard of before I started there, or that I wouldn't have been as familiar with. Things like Sisley Paris and those kind of ones, the more niche brands. So my friend said to me, you know, I'm sick of seeing that. Would you not ever set up a Facebook page for your beauty stuff? And I was like, oh God, I don't know. So anyway, I did. And then I used to write these big long posts, and I'd be a very expressive person. I loved English. I loved essay writing in school and stuff like that. So then the editor of the local newspaper was in with me one day in Brown Thomas. I was doing her makeup for an event. She was going to like one of the Network Ireland events, and she just said to me, would you like to maybe write a piece? And I was like, oh my God, yeah, because my Facebook posts were reams and reams long. And I remember at one stage somebody on Twitter saying to me, would you ever just set up an actual blog, because the posts are too long to read? So I had a lot to say, obviously, about skincare and beauty at the time. So I did that, and then I started writing with Cork Independent, and I'm there actually 10 years this month. So I'm writing beauty for 10 years. And then everything kind of evolved from there. So I was working in a hair salon then for a while as a hair salon manager. And then I was managing an aesthetic clinic. And obviously I have a certain amount of beauty background, but like obviously I wasn't doing injectables or anything, or we didn't have a laser machine. We had things like microderm and stuff. This was going back a good while ago now. So I continued doing the writing, and then the kind of opportunity with High Style came up, and I'd written bits and pieces for the brand before. And when I joined, we were really busy with style awards, and one of the things that we noticed was that there was a massive hunger among the hair and beauty industry for like an award ceremony, but like a kind of glitzy award ceremony, you know. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we decided to do the Hair and Beauty Awards, and that's kind of how that happened. And it's just everything has really evolved from a beauty perspective there. But when I started writing beauty 10 years ago, it was all makeup.
Yeah.
Like that's
It's
all
completely
anyone had an
different.
appetite for. It
Yeah.
was so strange. And I was always so skin focused because I'd
Yeah.
worked with big brands, and I'd worked and I was trained with SkinCeuticals as well when I worked in the clinic. And I was doing kind of peels and things like that. So I was really, there wasn't as much of an appetite for skincare as there is now, which is
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. Definitely during lockdown that changed it, because what did they say? They said like something like 20% of 20% of sales of skincare went up during lockdown. So it definitely changed into that kind of people caring, because they weren't wearing makeup. So then they looked at their skin a bit more on Zooms like this, and they went, actually, and I should actually fix my skin, what's underneath it, rather than just covering it with makeup.
And I think as well, like the kind of birth of the influencer, which I would not consider myself really to be an influencer, in the sense of like my following is small. It's engaged, but it's quite small, and it's a byproduct of, I suppose, my day job. But I think with the advent of influencers as well, like the makeup thing was such a big thing because it was so visual, and Instagram is so visual. And I don't think skincare is necessarily as visual unless you go into before and afters, or you're prepared to admit the aesthetic work that you have done, which
Yeah.
not everyone kind of wants to, and that's their own thing. But I think with makeup, the payoff was instant. But then, as you said, when lockdown hit, people were realizing, well, hang on a second now, I'm looking at myself on a screen all of the time. I'm focused on myself all of the time. And you know, they were talking a lot about this kind of tech neck thing, which became a massive thing during lockdown. People were realizing, oh my God, I haven't been looking after my neck, or I'm spending all this time on a computer or an iPad or a phone. And of course, as well, people were spending a little bit more time outdoors. The weather was quite good, and people were noticing that they were getting pigmentation and things like that. So the lockdown definitely changed it. But I think, you know, having worked in skincare for the majority of what I did in my career, I always kind of found that people would be like looking for the quick fix, you know, and they'd want something that would cover it. And I used to always say to them, well, look, why don't you try and fix the problem? Like, it'll take longer, but it's more rewarding, you know. So then my articles, I suppose, are kind of there's a lot of pictures and products and stuff like that. But then I do a lot of talking on my own Instagram just about my own skin journey. I mean, I have rosacea, I have psoriasis, so I have two pretty, and my psoriasis is pretty chronic in parts. Like, I have probably about 80% coverage in my scalp. And so I've always been really passionate about skincare, and it's from like when I was a child, being in Berthamis with my mom and seeing the creams and stuff that she used to buy and all that. So yeah, that's where my passion has always been skin. So I feel like the rest of the world is catching up.
Yeah, no, that's true, because I definitely think there is that kind of, I was trained with the first skincare brand I worked with was Dermalogica, and that was years ago, and I always had a passion for skin, but now it's just way bigger, the whole industry and everything. So if you were having looking back and seeing the way the industry has changed, because right now people are talking about, you know, recession and stuff like that. And, you know, before there was the lipstick effect, how are you finding, like, what are the trends that are huge at the moment that people are going for?
I think like the aesthetics industry has taken off in a massive way. And having worked in a clinic myself, and like obviously I wasn't doing the injectable treatments, but we always said to people, like, your injectables are 20% of what your face is. The other 80% is what you do every single day. And obviously there's a massive amount to do with laser and you know, radio frequency and all that element, and microneedling and all that sort of stuff. So I think where we saw a massive trend with people kind of using at-home microneedling kits and stuff like that, a lot of people, you know, I think people shouldn't try things at home like that unless they have a bit of knowledge, and unless they're going to be really, really careful. I
Yeah, no,
think
the home device.
yeah, so I think like, and all the microblading and all that kind of stuff at home, or not the microblading, but the dermaplaning at home and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I've seen people do some absolute butcher jobs, and people that are, that were quite skilled, that would know like a lot about skin or whatever. So yes, there was all that trend. So I think people are moving away from those trends now, and they're maybe investing. So the lipstick effect is kind of like in skincare. I think it's kind of, people are like, right, I can afford to do this one thing every 6 months, or I can afford to do this one thing every 3 months, or I can afford to do facial. And that's kind of what they're saving for. Like, I remember when I was working in the clinic, we had women that used to come in and pay for their Botox in tenors. They'd take a tenner out of their shopping money every week, and then they'd have their $250 or whatever for their Botox. So I think the lipstick effect for women now is probably, I think maybe Botox. I think it's one of the things that people are investing in. And I think people are becoming a little bit more open about it now. I do think that people still have to realize that you have to look at the tone and texture of your skin with what you're using every day.
Yeah, definitely. The healthiness of your skin is how you maintain. Botox will be. It's great. I love it, but it's only a percentage of that you have to really look after it. So when are the High Life Awards?
So the Hair and Beauty Awards are on the 16th of April, and we have them in Cork, which everyone loves, because it means that all the girls from Dublin and guys from Dublin get to come down to Cork for a night. It's on a Sunday night, because usually the salons and the industry is kind of closed on a Monday. And if they're not, they can usually kind of manage it so that their teams can come. We just found that Saturday was a big ask to ask people to take a day out of their business to travel to Cork. And we've loads of people, obviously, that travel from, Kerry and Waterford. We have a lot of Dublin salons taking part this year as well, which is great. And it's great to see. And there's a big appetite. 4 people on the judging panel. There's myself, there's Michael, who's the owner of High Style, and then there's Mary O'Donnell, who's a beauty expert, and Sean Taff, who is the god of hair. I mean, everybody just, like, he's incredible. He's an incredible guy. And he's a phenomenal hairdresser. And Mary is just a woman who has been in the beauty industry and has worked in her own salon and has owned her own salon. So she knows that industry absolutely inside out. So there's a good, strong judging panel. And we're looking forward to it, because something, it kind of, first of all, our nights are like incredible. And I know it's easy for me to say that, I'm behind the scenes, but we have a drinks reception, there's wine, there's a 3-course meal, people get really, really dressed up. It's not black tie, it's kind of as stylish as you like. Our theme this year is Gilded Glamour, so I'm expecting to see lots of sequins and stuff like that. And it really is a gala night, and it starts at 6:30 and usually ends about 3:30. Now, obviously, the awards part is in the middle of the night, so all the awards are given out by kind of 11-ish. And then it's just people decide to have a few drinks and a bit of a party, and they get to celebrate, because there's a band and a DJ. So it's nearly like a wedding, but more fun.
And what categories are up? So what are you judging for?
So we're looking, we have 3 different sections. So we have hair, beauty, and aesthetics. So the aesthetics then includes things like advanced skin, which would be laser. Because I think a lot of the time people don't realize like how important it is, if you're going to a skin clinic, that they have really great equipment, and that they're really trained, and that they're dedicated. One of the questions in our supporting evidence document is about upskilling for staff, because that's so important for people. It's really important that that when you're going in. So like, that's why we have the advanced section. So you have obviously your salons that do the facials, but then obviously laser and micro needling and all that sort of thing is slightly more specialized. So that's kind of how it is. And so we have it into sectors. So we have it in Munster, Leinster, Ulster, and Connacht. That's kind of how we base it. So it's I mean, we have got such an amazing, like, the tickets are actually nearly sold out already, which is brilliant. And there's a big focus kind of on using the night to market your business as well. You know, even being nominated. I mean, if people are putting it, they're finding that they're getting great interest, and it's a great talking point with customers and things like that. You know, it's a good way to market your business as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so the awards, that I actually know some people that are up for them and everything like that. So that's good. They'll be interesting for it. So if someone was, because I know with you at the moment, you're doing, you know, your Cork Independent, you're writing for them, and then you have your social media. So would you have any tips or tricks to help grow your social media platform? Because, you know, it might not be huge, but it's very engaged. It's your definite followers that are following you that are very engaged with it.
Yeah. Well, what I would say to people, and I say this to salons all the time because they would ask me this question, like, the amount of followers, that's a vanity metric, right? So if you have 700 followers, or you've 7,000, or you've 70,000, that's great, but it's kind of a vanity metric in a way, because it's just, are they engaged? You know, are they interested? Are they buying? Are they messaging you, telling you that they're buying what you recommended? That's for me the important thing. So growing your following, I suppose, is kind of being consistent, and also at like solving problems for people, helping people. Like, there's no point, I don't think there's any point in having a social media platform unless you want to kind of help people, if that makes sense. Unless you're selling things, that's a different thing. But say, for what I do, I want to help people. So I would have people all over the world, and that's the one thing about social media, is that it gives you access to people all over the world. And I've helped people in France and whatever, and I've given them the names of products that I think that they should use and stuff like that. So, and I think the other thing is just to be authentic as well. And like, I find it sometimes, like, I understand that people need to make money from their social media, because for some people it's their main source of income. But I do find the constant ads, and it's this thing and that thing and whatever, I think sometimes it dilutes the authenticity of what you're trying to say. Because if I'm telling you that a dermalogica cleanser is the best cleanser, and then next week I'm saying that a Nivea cleanser is the best cleanser, and the following week, so, you know, you've got to, like, for me, I've never changed my views on what I do with my skincare. So I call it the holy trinity of skincare. I do a vitamin C, an SPF, and a retinol. They're the three staples that I use, right? Don't always use the same brand, but like, I think it's, and for me, that's my message being, I'm going about this now a very long way of telling the story, but for me, that's my consistency in my posting, is that I always say to people, you really need, if you're going to buy 3 good products, if your budget allows you to buy 3 good products, this is what it is. So it's not necessarily always the same vitamin C. I can't always afford to buy the SkinCeuticals one, or, you know, or sometimes my skin might need a kind of a lower grade retinol, and I might need to go with the mask as opposed to a thing. But I think it's keeping your message consistent is really, really important, because people, like, if people think you're only codding them, they'll run away. And it's the same thing if you're a salon, and, you know, you're saying, you know, you need a Brazilian blow dry this week, but next week then you're saying extensions are the way to go, and then the following week you're saying don't get extensions, they damage your hair. You have to keep your message consistent, you know. And I think sometimes that's where people kind of jump on bandwagons of trends, you know, where they see trends, and it's like you know, that skin slugging thing. My nerves were bad because of it. I was like, I couldn't, you know, I was thinking, like, I can't see how this is going to work. You know, how this is like a fad, and it was a fad, because it's kind of gone again. Skin cycling is something that I think people always did. So there just wasn't a term, there wasn't terminology for it. So, like, keeping consistent, I think, is the most important thing, and also, like, engaging with people and offering to help people out as well, that are, you know, maybe on a different level, or, you know, like, you know, and get yourself out there as much as you can. If someone asks you to go on radio, or if somebody asks you to go on a podcast, do it. You know, do it. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah. And so if someone wanted to get into writing articles for magazines or papers or anything like that, how would you think that's the best way to approach it? Contact an editor, write up some articles, send them in. What do you think? What's the
Yeah.
best way?
Well, I think one of the ways of doing it is to self-publish. So to have a blog, which would have
Yeah.
been now blogs are now websites, right? So I have a website now. It doesn't get as much love because I'm quite busy, but I would say that's probably one of the best ways to do. And you know, the other thing is as well is that if it's going to be in print, and if you're writing for somebody else, you have a kind of a responsibility to them that everything is correct and everything is accurate. So, like, writing for someone else is completely different to self-publishing, but I would self-publish first, which is what I
Yeah.
did. And you know, make sure that it's you know, you can make your point a difference, but obviously, like, it needs to be grammatically correct and spell checked and all that kind of stuff. That's really important as well for a long standing relationship, because as somebody who has to edit other people's work, sometimes you can be like, oh God, you know, this is really hard. So unless you have a real grow for it, it's not something that it's not something that comes easy. It's not something you can force, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, because there are a few people like that I do know that are into that, like writing up, you know, huge captions on their Instagram and all of this kind of stuff. And it's like how you collate, how you put it together, and then
Yeah.
it's just basically getting in touch with places. Because I do know from, say, even the aesthetic magazines or anything like that, they're always looking for editorial pieces, you know, and
They
it's a
are.
great way to build your brand and great way to build you as a person. Just writing up everything, make sure it's 100% accurate, fill out all the details, and you know, and then send it into places, and it will get picked up on.